Hey guys, my name is Lauren. Today we're making fox-shaped macarons. So we'll be doing the French version of macarons today. So there will be a dry mixture and a wet mixture, and then we'll end up combining them to make the macaron batter. So for the dry mixture, it's a combination of almond flour and confectioner's sugar or powdered sugar. So I weigh out my ingredients. So I use a little kitchen scale, so zero that out. And then you'll want 65 grams of almond flour. I use Bob's Red Mill. So far it's the brand that seems to have the least amount of moisture in the almond flour, which is what I want, because in Florida I'm already contending with a lot of moisture in the air. To keep even less moisture in the almond flour, I keep mine in the freezer, inside of a freezer bag at all times. I'm gonna go ahead and add 65 grams. Okay, and then I'm gonna add 65 grams of powdered sugar as well. So our final weight should be 130. So to avoid grainy looking macarons in the finished product, you really want to make sure that your dry mixture is as fine a powder as you can get it. So I run it a few times through this sieve and also through the food processor several times and remove any larger clumps that don't naturally shake out of this. So we'll run it through probably 3 or 4 times. With macarons, there's a lot of rules, a lot of steps. They're really not difficult once you get the hang of it, but there's definitely a learning curve. The way that I think about it, and cat lovers don't take offense to this, cats are cool, but if you don't pet them the exact right way and the exact right number of times, then sometimes they scratch you. So same thing with macarons. If you don't do it the way that it likes, they might not turn out as pretty as you want them to. They will still be delicious. I've had quite a few macarons that didn't turn out perfectly, but they're still really good. Anyway, macarons are the cat of the dessert world. But I mean, once you learn what a cat likes, then you're pretty much on good terms with the cat. You've made friends. So same thing with the macarons. Once you figure out what it likes and what it doesn't like in the weather that you're in, you're pretty much gonna have good macarons from there on out. It's just, you've got to get to know each other. It's not bad. You're making friends with your dessert food. Okay, so if you can see this is the stuff that won't fit through. So I'm not gonna force it because I don't want the overly chunky bits of almond flour in there. So I'm just gonna throw that out and it'll be fine. Okay, so I'm gonna run that through the food processor for a couple of minutes, and then we're gonna run it through this guy again, and then the food processor, and then this guy. It's a process, but it's worth it to have your pretty macarons at the end. So here we go. So that's done. That can just sit, and now we're going to make the meringue part. So at this point, you want to make sure that you have a really clean mixing bowl and whisk. And then just to double check, make sure that you're completely good to go, I always take some white vinegar, put a little bit on a paper towel, and then just rub that around your mixing bowl. And that's gonna kill any excess grease that may have been left over if it just wasn't washed absolutely perfectly, but really you want to get rid of all the grease. Any grease will prevent your meringue from meringuing or, you know, inflating the way that you want it to. Cookies just won't turn out as good. So I'm doing the same thing with my whisk, just really quickly. And then while that dries, I'm gonna go ahead and measure out my ingredients. So you're gonna want 45 grams of white granulated sugar. So we're gonna go ahead and measure that out with our scale here. There we go. 45 grams of sugar. This is some eggs that I actually took out and started yesterday. So you don't need to do this, but I do because I'm fighting Florida humidity. You're only gonna use egg whites for this recipe. So you go ahead and separate them the day before, put them in a bowl, wrap it with saran wrap, and just let your egg whites chill in the fridge for, I like to do it for a couple of days. These I pulled out yesterday because I just kind of decided to do this on a whim. So the longer you let them age in the fridge, the more that the extra moisture in your egg whites will kind of evaporate, and you'll be left with something that's going to contribute to a little bit of a drier batter, which is, again, good if you're dealing with high humidity situations. So my recipe calls for 50 grams of eggs. So I put 2 egg whites in there, which is a little bit over 50 grams, but as the water evaporates out of your eggs as they're aging, you lose a little bit of weight. So I overdid it knowing that I'm gonna throw out a little bit of the extra egg white today. Okay, so we're gonna zero it out, and you wanna make sure when you're cracking your eggs not to get any yolks in this mixture. If you get any in, you've pretty much doomed it. So just go ahead and throw it out and start over. But I mean, it doesn't require that many eggs. This is just 2. Anyway, shooting for 50 grams here. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and put my egg whites into my mixer and let it mix for a little bit on low until it starts looking foamy. And then I'm gonna add 1/8 of a teaspoon of cream of tartar. And I do recommend when you're working with the egg white portion of this to not do anything in the room that will add humidity or make it hotter. If you can, make it cool in the house. Don't go ahead and preheat your oven yet. Don't boil water, try not to do dishes. We're doing everything we can to reduce the humidity and keep the macarons happy. Okay, so you can see how it's kind of lightly foamy. It hasn't turned white yet, but at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and add my 1/8 of a teaspoon of cream of tartar. Okay, see how it's starting to kind of a little bit hold its shape? So at this point, I'm gonna take that 45 grams of white sugar and I'm gonna slowly mix it in, like super slowly, while it's mixing. I'm just going to interrupt really quickly. We're going to let this continue to blend until it's sort of at soft peaks. At that point is when you would add any food coloring or flavoring to the actual cookie part. I'm not going to add any vanilla extract or anything, and I'm only going to make white macarons today because all that I have is gel food coloring, which works much better than the liquid food coloring. However, for me, I found that even 3 drops of the gel food coloring is just a wee bit too much for my humidity level. So until I can order some of the dry food coloring powder, I'm just gonna make white and then paint on it at the end. So See, at this stage where it's not standing straight up, it moves around. When you pick it up, that is soft peak stage, and that is when you can add your food coloring or any flavorings that you want. But I'm not doing that today, so we can just go straight to stiff peak phase. So I'll show you what that looks like in a second. Okay guys, so it's usually a good sign when you have a bunch of meringue powder that just sticks on your whisk. So see at the tip, you can see it's not falling over at all. Standing straight up, not bending around. So that is your stiff peak meringue. So that means it is perfect for adding your dry mixture of almond flour and confectioner sugar. So I will show you how we do that. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put that in. Okay, so there's a technique for mixing together your dry mixture and your egg mixture, your meringue, and it's called Macaronage. And I know there was absolutely no French accent there, but humor me, that's basically what it's called. So you're kind of folding the mixture essentially. So scooping around the edges, under, and just kind of letting it mix itself. And we're not trying to be too vigorous with it at this point. As soon as it looks like the dry mixture and the meringue are well enough combined, then we'll go ahead and add the rest, well, another third of the dry mixture. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and add another third. You can kind of cut through the center of it, kind of like a scrape across the edge of the bowl, cut through the center sort of a deal. Make sure you get the bottom of it mixed in there too. You get the hang of it after a little bit. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and add that last third of our almond flour mixture. Okay, so at this point, the dry mixture and the meringue powder are pretty well combined. So I'm just trying to get it to the right consistency now. What you're looking for is sort of like a lava-like consistency. So a little bit thick, but still ribbons off of your spatula. If you're able to form a figure 8 with it when it drips off without it breaking, you're in the right spot. So, and like I said, I'm gonna deflate this a little bit also. So I'm gonna be running it along the edges a little bit more like that, just to kind of make sure that we don't have any hollow macarons. So we'll just sort of test it as we go for that figure 8. So if you fold it too many times, it's not gonna form the macarons that you want. And if you don't fold it enough, then it's also not gonna do what you want. You gotta get it just right. You gotta Goldilocks that stuff. Okay. All right, guys. I believe we are there. See my pretty figure 8s? So that, I believe, is the consistency that I'm looking for. All right, so I need to stop mixing it. Okay, so now that our batter is done, I'm just gonna pour it into a piping bag. It's a lot easier if you have a little cup to kind of balance it on. Okay, so now we're gonna go ahead and prepare our pans. I actually made these little fox templates and put them on my website. So if you want to use one, go ahead and go to my website, queenpinkitchen.com, and find the templates page and go ahead and print it off. It's completely free. So I just put it there to be useful. So anyway, this is what I'm going to use. It's my template. I'm going to put it underneath, and then I have a sheet of parchment paper that I'm going to put on top. Now, to hold the parchment paper down so it doesn't move around, you can go ahead and put like a dot of macaron batter in each corner just to kind of keep it still. So 4 dots. Okay. Lightly press it down, and that's not going anywhere. So this is what you are working with. So now we're going to go ahead and just pipe our macarons. Okay, so when you're piping, you want to hold your bag straight up, and I'm just going to go for it. And you do want to stop shy of the outer line, because in the next few steps you'll do things and it'll make them spread out a little bit. Okay, so now that we're done with one tray, we're going to go ahead and knock some of the air bubbles out of it. So we're going to slam it against the counter a couple of times and make the air bubbles rise to the top. So now if you look closely, you might find a little bit of air bubbles rising to the top, so you can just take a toothpick and pop those, and you can actually use your toothpick to kind of push the batter lightly in the direction of the fox ears also. You don't want to move it too much. If you move it too much, you might prevent your macaron foot from rising. So just little movements. And this shape is actually really similar to heart-shaped macarons. So I also have a template that has the outlines for both hearts and foxes, in case you want to do a mix of both. So now you need to let these rest. While they rest, they're going to form a sort of little invisible skin on the outer layer of them. And you'll know the skin is there when you can touch it with your finger and it doesn't stick to your finger at all. So since I am in a high humidity area, it does take a long time for the skin to form for me. So my best trick is actually to let these rest in a different room of the house that's not the kitchen. My bedroom, I always know, stays a little bit cooler than the kitchen, so I let it rest in there. And I also have the overhead fan on, and the light breeze, not a strong breeze, but the light breeze also helps them form that skin a little bit quicker. So for me, it takes about an hour for the skin to form. I've heard of other people in less humid situations it only taking like 15 to 20 minutes. So you just have to check it and see when it's ready for you. So we've let our macaron batter rest. We now have a good skin on them, so when I touch them, my finger doesn't stick. And since they're in the other room, I went ahead and preheated my oven. So I have my oven heated to 305 right now. That's what the outer thermometer says. But I have a separate oven thermometer on the inside of my oven because this guy's not accurate. So the inside is 325 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's what I'm gonna bake these at. I'm gonna check them at about 13 minutes and see if they're ready. You know when they're ready if they have risen, and if you put your finger on them and can wobble them a little bit, they're not quite ready. So then just bake them for another minute at a time and keep checking them every minute until you know that they're done and they're not moving around anymore when you try to shake them with your finger. So we're just gonna go ahead and stick these guys in for 13 minutes and see how they turn out. Okay, so it's been 13 minutes, so we're just gonna take a look. Okay, so they're not wobbling anymore, so these guys are done. And I will show you what they look like close up. Okay, so these are my little Macaron babies. So you can see they have little feet on them. I'll pull one up. So you can see they have risen, they have a good foot on them. And yeah, that's what my little fox faces look like before I color them in. So I actually color in my Macarons one of two different ways. The first way is a little bit easier. It's with my AmeriColor edible color markers. It's a 10-pack set. They have a whole rainbow's worth of colors, and I use them over and over for macarons or sugar cookies. So you'll use them again and again. I really like them. So the second way that I do it is mixing together food coloring and high-proof alcohol. So I have a high-proof rum, but you can also use vodka, or if you have it Everclear. The idea is you want really, really high-proof alcohol because it will evaporate really quickly. So all that you'll be left with is the food coloring, the sort of watered down food coloring on your cookie. So here I am mixing two colors, the electric yellow and the super red, both AmeriColor, which is my favorite brand of food coloring. It's a nice gel paste, so it's really intense, the colors that you get. What I like about this method is you're not dependent on the colors that come in the packaged marker set. So you can make virtually whatever color you want, like a completely custom color with this method, just based on whatever food colorings you mix together with the alcohol. It's just like watercolor, just with food coloring and alcohol. So it's super easy. I'll post a link for the watercolor brushes that I use down in the description below, as well as links for everything else that I'm using in this video. I'm gonna go ahead and fill one of these bad boys. I made some vanilla Swiss buttercream, and I also made some raspberry jam. So I'm gonna stick that in the center as well. And we stick our cute little fox face on, just like that. Ta-da! Thanks for watching, guys. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe. It helps me continue to film these videos. If you have anything that you would like to see me do next, please write below in the comments. I hope you give these a try. They're really a fun little project to do. Thanks, guys. See you next time.